Hello everyone and welcome to the Space Marine 2 review video. So we'll begin this, as we always do, with some important points, but also I would like to say before we begin that I will be playing you a gameplay video of me just fiddling around with the operations. At first I didn't even know that I'm playing with people, I thought I was playing with bots, but after the mission I saw where to switch for the private options and play only with bots, so you'll see that till the end of the video. Sorry about that, and sorry for those players that played with me, cause I was rusty as heck and I didn't know what I was doing and where was I going, so sorry about that. And back to the review. So, the important points. As always, this review is subjective. This is my opinion, and the opinion of others may vary. Second, the game is bought with my own money, which means no one is paying for this review, and no one influences what I say. Third, the review is spoiler-free. I will talk about the story, but only in a general manner, without talking about anything that happened during the playthrough. That much. If there are some spoiler sections, I'll mark them, but I don't think this video will have any. The video will be divided into sections, all in the timeline below and in the description of the video, so if you're interested in only certain parts, feel free to pick and choose. Also, a fifth, only to this review, is that I'm reviewing only the single player mode of this game. I'm not reviewing the multiplayer aspect, because that's something entirely different and is a whole more subjective, because it depends on who you actually play with and what type of a person you are. So, and who do you, if you, well, playing random groups, and who you have to interact with. So, you know, that's not what I'll be reviewing. So let us continue and dive in to the first section. And that section is general overview. So, any of you ever wondered how it's like to be a 7 feet tall, 2 heart having, rapid healing, standard bulletproof skin having, space legionnaire crusading in the name of his god emperor? You did? Well, then you came to the right place, as Space Marine 2 is a game when you can feel how it's like to smash some heretics, burn the witches and destroy some Xenos. I guess all in a day's work for a Marine. So, without further ado, let us dive into the story aspect of the game. In the second entry to the series, we fight the enemies of mankind once again, as Lieutenant Dimitri and Titus. But this time, we have to prove our loyalty to the Emperor and our brothers. Again, as we are reinstated into the Ultramarines after the events of the first game, which I'll not cover in this review. Well, we meet up our hero as he is still part of the Death Watch and going on a mission on a Tyrannid attack planet. I don't have a good feeling about this, you know. And yeah, as you guessed it, this time not everything goes right for the Angel of the Emperor. And after this is where we get full control over Titus and meet with our new squad buddies. In our fight against the Tyrannid Horde, we happen to come upon a series of events that will lead us to uncover quite an interesting and confidential plan. But that is unfortunately kinda spoiled by the promo materials to this game, because yeah, well, we saw those materials, those screenshots and those movies, and we know, without any spoilers, that outside of the Tyrannid threat, there are some Thousand Sons present. And where there are Thousand Sons present, there is also Tzeentch, mixing things up and plotting some schemes, you know. And where there are schemes in Tzeentch, there is double crossing. So, you probably know where I'm going with this, I suppose. But, for the sake of the spoiler-free review, I'll only say that the story is not the strongest suit of the game. And, honestly, I think it wasn't supposed to be. It is decent for what it is, and it provides a nice backdrop for all the action that's basically the meat and potatoes of the game, and for the part that makes you actually practice before you dive into the multiplayer aspect. And that's also a reason that I think that the story is kind of on the lighter side, that they focused on the multiplayer, and you will hear that throughout this review a bunch of times, so be ready for that. And yeah, yeah, I think that covers up the story section basically. So now that we have the story aspect covered, let's, well, shift to the gameplay section. As, well, you'll probably see in this little snippet of a gameplay video, we operate in a 3-man squad, and that's throughout most of the game, which, in contrast to the first game, where I think you went more or less solo, I don't remember, well, exactly. But we don't have much control over our squad mates. They do help and pick up their slack, so we don't have to babysit them. I played on veteran and they held their ground okay, and when I was down, they quickly picked me up for the free revive you get. So overall, I'm pleased with that AI of our squad members. They did get themselves in a bit of dicey situations, but everything was okay. As for combat itself, we have loadouts, which we can tweak before a mission. And during a mission we have plenty of situations where we can change our weapons to mix and match our preferences and to maybe get a taste of what the game offers and what different weapons play as or what different weapons do. You know, I quickly found my favorite loadout, which consisted of a plasma gun and a power sword combo in the primary weapon slot, and in the secondary slot a two-handed plasma, I think it was Devastator, which was basically a two-handed plasma rifle. And it stayed with me till the very end. Or at least till the game didn't decide that I need to switch and hit me up with something different. Because the game sometimes does that. The melee weapons offer quick attacks, heavy attacks, combos. As for the power sword, we had stances which we can switch, and you can see this in this video. It's kind of okay. We need to mix and match depending on whatever enemies we are facing, because sometimes we want those heavy slashes for those beefier enemies and to knock them out of the block, but sometimes when they're mostly gaunts, we kind of want to smash through them quickly, you know, to not get overwhelmed. During the fast-paced combat, we need to quickly judge as well if attacks against us are parryable or evadable. And that's denoted by those, I think they're octagons. I didn't count the how many sides they have. Well, yeah, and also that is not my favorite part of the game. If it's an encounter with fewer enemies, then okay, it works flawlessly. But sometimes, and especially with Tyranids, we get attacked by a horde of enemies. And then suddenly you see blue and red flashes coming up, and when you try to react you get surprised, you know, or you don't know which way to react. And the game does assist you by offering you kind of a automated, you know, turn around and parry the nearest one, or do the closest one. And you do get iframes during that, so it is okay, but you need to not lose your cool. And I think that that sort of a reactive defense system doesn't fit well with a Horde or Muso type of battlefield. Well, maybe it would be a bit better if I had more practice and played a lot, but I did play sparsely and, you know, with bigger pauses between episodes, so that could be where my fault is, you know, and due to the harsh timetable I wasn't able to put enough time that would enable me to practice this setup and this reactive defense system. So maybe I'm not a fan of, but maybe it would be better if you practiced it. So that's debatable for me. As for the controls themselves, Tidus actually reacts quite good. You do feel like a walking tank, but that's a space marine should feel, you know. Strikes and hits feel impactful, and we have a carnival of gore and carnage when it comes to combat, and especially with the melee finishers, as well demonstrated in this video. So that's overall a great plus that we didn't have any dump down or, you know, make it proper type of thing going on here. We have the gore and viscera, which fits the Wh40k setting very well. But also another con that I see is that I don't know how to feel about the armor and health system. I think it's a bit iffy here, you know. Health, at least on veteran mode, is struck down like weed on a harvest day, and that's... you would think that's bad, you know, but it's actually no consequence, since for starters we have one free revive if our squad members get to us, and they do each and every time. But if we found a relic, we also get another revive with the relic. But there are also med packs. But also, if you quickly hit an enemy before your flashing health goes down, it restores. So yeah, and it's a generous amount, I feel. So you could argue that it could prove to, you know, make the gameplay easier or dumb it down, but wait a second. If that's not good enough, there is also the armor part. To start, you have 2 bars of armor, and the attacks eat through the bars. But if we do a finisher, and we do a lot of finishers, we restore a full bar. So you kinda get it, I think, what I'm talking about. If we try to get low, just do a finisher. If we get in a dicey situation, you can always enter berserk mode and, you know, and try to hit as many enemies as you can to keep your health constantly up and do those finishers constantly. So it's kinda hard to completely die and wipe. You could do that. I feel that there are sections which you could do that. You can get overwhelmed, but it's not that easy to do, which I suppose is good, as this is a story campaign, you know. But also I think that it's by design like that, because it's supposed to work well with the horde-like encounters and keep you constantly in the heat of battle. But I would agree with that till you get to a boss encounter. Then it falls off completely, since a lot of bosses constantly move around. You can't hit them constantly to get that health going up. You cannot finish them because there are little to no adds or no adds, and you can't get that armor up. And a lot of bosses also have those weird ass attacks when you can't do anything to them because you get knocked away, so you have to dodge and wait for an opening. They also have weird hitboxes and big AoEs, especially on the bigger bosses. So you just kind of weave in and weave out and wait for your turn, which is a big contrast to the normal gameplay with the gaunts and the other, well, trash enemies. So those two types of things, I don't know if they work well together. So there's that. At least that's my feeling about it. Also, sometimes normal combat with the chaff and the chaff enemies, it doesn't work that well, that system, you know. I have a feeling that either it was... No, I don't think it was designed in a hurry. I think it was designed so it would fit, but I don't know if I like it that much, honestly. For now, I'll say that's all for this section, so let's advance to the next one. And the next one is audio. So for the audio department, I am not quite sold on this one here, well, in some aspects. I feel as important things like bolter sounds or the sounds that our power armor make are not quite what they should be. They lack a certain oomph to them, you know? As for the music, this is not Mechanicus or Darktide. You won't have that gothic feeling choral bangers that you have in those games, and it would make you don your robes and throw down on the dance floor swinging incense in the name of the God Emperor. Oh no, you won't have that here. But the tracks are present in the game and they're not bad. Honestly, they're not that bad. Moments have adequately chosen music, I feel, to amplify the sense of dread or give the action a bit more urgency. Well, the problem is, due to the nature of this fast-paced and horde-based encounter system, you do not and cannot focus on it as much as Mechanicus. I guess it would be a similar trait to Darktide, but I don't know why. I feel like Darktide music punches through a bit more than Space Marine's music. But I do acknowledge that those action-packed moments require more of your focus, and that tends to muffle out the music, you know, when you're not focusing on it that much, but you're focusing on the gameplay. The compositions are not as recognizable as in the previous games, but that doesn't make them... previous games. In the other games I mentioned, but that does not make them bad. Sorry, I can't seem to pronounce anything today. If you take a listen to the tracks themselves, for example on YouTube, you can find some bangers there. Yeah, some are okay. But as far as game soundtracks go, I'm afraid none of those present here left an imprint in my memory. Well, sometimes it happens, you know, sometimes it happens. So that would be all for what I have to say for the audio section. So then we'll jump to the video section. And I think this is one of the stronger suits of the game. The Wh40k atmosphere is quite well done here. We have everything ranging from large jungles to military bases to gothic cathedrals and some chaos shenanigans-stricken vistas. So all the good stuff from Wh40k, I think. And variety is a good thing, because as fun as big gothic cathedrals are, if it's only them, you can only stomach so much before it gets boring, you know? Something that's worth mentioning is the scale. The scale, I think, is the strongest suit of the game. This game does a very good job at showing how a Tyranid attack would look. Swarms and swarms of Tyranids on a murder spree enveloping the whole planet like a locust swarm. The game does justice to that, and it's, I think, one of the selling points. From what I remember of the promo materials, it was prevalent in them as well. And, well, now we know why. So, good thing is that not only the marketing aspect worked, but we do get the whole package that they showed us. But as for the details themselves, I think that horror games may have did it better, but that's because of a sort of a different aspect. For example, I think that the Deathwing game did better in detail. And both are horde squad-based games, but Deathwing works on a different scale and a different setting, which has us confined to a space Hulk, and we see everything from a first-person perspective. So they could have, you know, lessening the scale and focusing on a first-person perspective, they showed us more and finer details. So that's not a fair comparison, because the same details could backfire in open areas of Space Marine, would definitely make the development time and costs higher, and wouldn't actually provide much more, because, like I said, in the audio section, we tend to focus, at least I, the horde of enemies and on the action pace, much less on details. So I think that them having a little less details than, for example, Deathwing, isn't something bad. It's actually good, because that hard work wouldn't go as recognized as there. That's what I feel. So video is good. It's one of the stronger suits of the game. And now to the Misc section. In this section we take a look at what the internet and other people say about the game. I mainly get quick reviews, not the lengthy ones, the full ones. I just get the shorter ones from Metacritic and Steam comments, because they're fairly short and I can pick from various one and debate a paragraph or two on how I feel about those. I discard blatant hundreds and zeros that have nothing in them besides game good or game bad, that sort of a thing, you know. And I always try to pick from a broader spectrum, so a few good ones, a few bad ones, and tell you how it's seen in the internet. So let's begin with the gaming outlets, and we'll start with Tryhard Guides, which gave this game a 100. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is a game for fans of the franchise and newcomers alike, providing great cinematic action gameplay, genuine fun that can be experienced alone or with a group. It's my favorite game of the year so far, and try as I might, can't find anything to complain about. It's just plain good. Well, don't agree that it's a 100 out of 100 game. I did find things to complain about, and I told you about them before, and I will reiterate when it comes to my review. So for now I'll just say that I don't think it's 100, but I do agree that it could be experienced by fans of the series and of the franchise, as well as for newcomers. That is something I entirely agree with. Then we'll jump to the second one. Well played to give this game a 95 out of 100. To completely divorce myself from my long love of Warhammer, I would still estimate Space Marine 2 as an exceptional gaming experience. The narrative can only get as deep as the genre allows, but even within those limits it plays with interesting ideas. The very nature of the beast being one of this connection, with 40 generous millennia distorting our concept of sensibility and preservation. This is a universe of conflict, pain and endless peril, and Saber has made it incredibly fun to inhabit, with plenty of reasons to revisit, and, most importantly, convince your mates to join in. I don't know. I don't know if I could say it gets as deep as the genre allows, because you can definitely find games with deeper narrative in the same genre. And I don't know if you completely divorce yourself from your love of Warhammer here, but I will talk about that a bit later. So next we'll jump to Inven, which gave this game 80 out of 100. This is an excellent action title that captures the essence of being a space marine. The visceral thrill of shooting, slashing and destroying everything in your path is incredibly satisfying. And the intriguing lore is expertly woven into the core gameplay. Although the AI can be somewhat lacking, and there are a few bugs and a slightly limited number of missions, the title's strengths far outweigh these minor drawbacks. So I think, like I said, the limited number of missions is, well, by design, because they wanted to focus on the multiplayer aspect, and the multiplayer aspect was focused down to a couple of missions, which they later did, and are still adding stuff to, so that's one thing to keep in mind. The AI lacking, I mean, I found it okay on Veteran, not much to say about this. It did have some shortcomings, but yeah, I think it's passable. It is visceral and it's very fun, I agree with that. So let's jump to Games Hub. Games Hub gave this a 70. It simultaneously tries to be as mature as possible through constant depictions of excessive brutality, while also being stubbornly unwilling to engage with its source material, beyond the aspects of most problematically aimed at 12-year-olds. It is in the most basic of senses very fun, and I will be coming back to it again when new operation missions drop for free over the next year. Its combat loop is exhilarating, and its visual splendor immaculate. Its entire package just sits in such tonal disharmony within itself, and worse so still when compared to the other recent Wh40k video games. Perhaps, ironically, that makes Space Marine 2 the truest and most immersive satire of fascism in gaming yet, though. Just a whole lot of hollow sound and fury. Well, don't know what you're getting at, but this is not a game, not a genre where you would want to tackle problems and source material beyond what it's required to get this an action-paced and good brutal feeling. This is not that game. If you want to tackle problems and lore more deeply, you would have to go for example, Rogue Trader, which is an entirely different game, entirely different genre. So, I don't agree with this review, at least parts of this review. So combat loop is exhilarating. No, I mean it's fun, but exhilarating? I don't know about that. So that's it from the gaming outlets. Let's see what some users have to say. So first is Bagged GTI, which gave it a 9 out of 10. I highly recommend playing the first Space Marine before starting this one, as there are numerous callbacks to the original game, including a twist at the end that really sets the tone for this sequel. The visuals are stunning. I often find myself stopping to admire the beautifully haunting landscapes. The combat is incredibly fluid, making it feel as if you're slicing through enemies like a hot knife through butter. Each weapon feels unique and different, adding variety to the gameplay. The story is engaging and keeps you hooked from start to finish. This game gives off nostalgic vibe of classic Xbox 360 title. No microtransactions, no pay-to-win nonsense, just a well-polished, enjoyable experience. The only thing I would have liked to see is some progression for weapons or armor from the story, which could have made the game even more replayable. Overall, this is a solid 10/10 in my books. Yeah, he's right here. Some progression with the equipment would be good for the story part. We do have it for the multiplayer and post-game part, but it would be needed for the story part. As no microtransactions, well, you can buy cosmetics, so I don't agree with here. I do agree that it's not pay to win, it's just strictly cosmetics. But yeah, the weapon, the loadouts feel good. They do feel different from each other. That's also something I agree. And the story is engaging. So let's jump to the next user. Riku ESP gave it an 8 out of 10. Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 looks absolutely incredible. Visually, it is stunning. On the gameplay side, there are a few small things that could be improved, like the aiming, but overall it nails the fantasy perfectly. You truly feel like a Space Marine, whether you know Warhammer 40k or not. The game does a great job of pulling you into the setting and making you want to learn more about the lore. The campaign alone is worth playing, and the multiplayer is also quite fun. A very strong and satisfying experience. Well, I do agree, the game gives off a strong experience, and it will make you interested in the lore if you're not a fan of it. So, yeah, mostly agree. Next up we have Hero 1, which gave this game a 6 out of 10. It's not a bad game, and you will enjoy it if, like me, you're a Warhammer 40k fan, but I didn't like that it's 100% focused on multiplayer. Even the campaign, you know, the streamer era, everything has to be Twitch friendly. The game constantly pushes you to subscribe to Game Pass, and if you play the campaign alone, it gives you free bots. Even so, the campaign saves the game, with a good story and well-localized cutscenes featuring voices in several European languages, such as Spanish, French, German, etc. Sadly, the rest of the game doesn't make sense to play solo. For example, there is a mission mode where you can play with 3, and if they're bots and you die, you don't respawn after the countdown like you would online. Therefore, you have to finish the entire mission without dying and without something. It's kinda redacted here. It's an average game that could have been great if it had been designed for single player. On top of that, this type of game affects the FPS, which drop a lot and make it somewhat uncomfortable. I'll have something to say about that in my section. For now, let's say I agree with a couple of things. I will get to one last review before I go to my section, because I don't want to reiterate the points a couple of times. So, next one is 6-Gate, which gave this game 5 out of 10. Extremely boring, cheap, lazy, and unrewarding game. Warhammer 40k fanboys will claim this game is a masterpiece because it's Warhammer 40k, while being a well-polished pile of shit. Bolters have no weight or sense of energy behind them. Shooting a bolter rifle feels like shooting paintball guns. Awful implementation of ass-Creed style indicator combat. Enemies about to attack you will be highlighted with a prompt to counter the attack. Problem is the camera doesn't work in conjunction with this system, and you just constantly get stunned by enemies off screen. But sure, the game is a 10 to those Warhammer kids because the characters say brother a lot. That makes it good, and not all of the actual gameplay. No sir, that's not lazy at all, when the dialogue is so Warhammery. I get what he's talking about, you know. You have that kind of a weird feeling, but like I said, I will reiterate on this last and the previous one in my section. So that's coming right up. So finally, let's go to the meat and potatoes of this video, and that is in my review section. And before we begin, I would like to yet again say that I am only basing this on the single player mode. So yeah. You would ask, what's in this game for the people who are not total 40k or Warhammer maniacs? Well, it's not exactly an easy thing to sell to those people. This is an action game where you fight against horde of enemies, and like all horde battlers, it suffers from the same problems, and that is repetitiveness. And well, it's kinda baked into the type of game, you know? At least I feel it is. You could say that must not always be the case, is it? And yes, I think it's not always the case. For example, let's take a look at the Musou genre games. You do beat hordes of same stuff using the same established movesets, and around X time of the game you basically get all of those moves, and the surrounding systems where you can spice those things up. And that's why games like, at least some of the newer, well, maybe not newer, I think it's prevalent from a long time now, some in the games like Dynasty Warriors will offer your systems with crafting or enchanting or something like that to make you have to do something instead of just aimlessly whack at hordes of the same enemies. But does Space Marine have an equivalent of that? And I'm afraid it does not. We do not have any form of crafting, any form of enchanting, no masterworking or stuff like that, no finding any schematics or stuffs to unlock weapons. We do have, as I pointed out and show you at this video, the weapon experience, where you can get a different grade of weapon, but that's not for the story part, that's post-campaign. And I think that the problems that I mentioned and that the last two reviewers mentioned is because the main focus was the online mode. And that's why the single player mode suffers from a lot of those samey moments, you know, where you have a sort of a feeling that, I done that. And yeah, you did, a bunch of times. And I could say a lot of times. You can spice a mission up by using a different weapon loadout from the established weapon armory, but that's basically all that you get from the single player. The operations and story adjacent missions after the campaign offer an additional customization option by not using the main story character, but that's basically what it offers you is also the same loadout plus a few more different options that you get to unlock, but so what if you don't get access to that in the campaign, you know? Also, in those loadouts that we get, I feel like there are some staples that are missing. Like, for example, Prometheum weapons, you know? Or access to some specialized marines like tech marines or apothecaries, you know, or chaplains. We have squad members here, but there is only one instance when there is a dreadnought to help us, and dreadnoughts are one of the all-time favorites of the series. Not to mention there are no transports or other war machines used in the campaign setting, and I think that's a missed opportunity where you have that much of a Tyrannid threat and, for example, you're not using whirlwinds or something like that. As the audio goes, like I said, this is not a Wh40k title to represent what the setting should feel like. I think there are more titles that do this justice, like the mentioned Mechanicus or Dark Tide, but I also feel because of that focus that I was talking about during the action segments, this does not feel as grievous as it should. As for the video side, this game does look good. It does. It has the feel and it has the variety. It gives off the Horde vibes and all, and the performance on my machine was good even with all the things going on screen, as you can see in the video. Well, I did say it run well on my machine, but that's aside from one excruciating bug that I found. And it's honestly, for the amount of time that this is out, it's kinda hard to you know, to not look at this as something that it should be patched a long while ago, you know? Because after some playtime, I didn't have that from the start when I was recording, but after a while, I had, when I booted up the game, I had massive frame drops, even in the mine menu. And in-game was completely unplayable. I have even one of the early episodes, was it 3 or 4, something like that, where I didn't know what's happening and it was near unplayable. And I found out on my own that it's due to the shader cache. When I delete the shader cache and verify files on Steam, then it works great. And it's not something that's fun to do more than once, you know, and I had to do this numerous times when I was recording. Otherwise it just would drop from stable 60 to 30. Have a dip for a second or two and then get back to 60. Play well for 3 seconds and back with a dip to 30. So no, that's not something that should be here for that long of a time. And it's not only me that's experiencing that. You can find a lot of threads on the internet where people experience similar problems and other ones. So I'll have to take a point for the bugs and the support, because when I read the forums that they are talking with the dev team, but I didn't see fixes when I was experiencing that bug, and I found the fix by myself with the help of the internet, and yeah, it's still to this day isn't patched, because I didn't have any new patches, and I still experienced that bug when I was trying to record the review, you know? So you would ask, what's my feeling about this game while taking all of those things into account? I think, honestly, I think that without the fandom backing it up, this is a 7 out of 10 game. It does things, and it does them good, but there doesn't seem to be an aspect it excels in. And even more, there isn't a feeling that the single player part received as much polish as it should. And be it that it's definitely not the main aspect this game focuses on, but I still think there are decisions that make it a worse experience than it very well could be. If we take Warhammer into account, then it's a good Warhammer game. And it's not a common found thing, because the Warhammer license is being used in, well, different quality titles. And the past year or so it was kinda better with the Rogue Trader and this game, and I think there was a couple of other smaller games like the Orc one. Yeah, so it's being worked on, and I think the license is being used way better than it was used in the past. So yeah, good titles being few and far between, I think this game is an addition that's definitely a welcomed one. But in short, if you're not an online player, or if you're not interested in the lore, or I would dare say you're interested only in the lore and the world, then I would advise you to not get this game, unless it's on a very high discount. I think it falls short on improving the genre, even though it's not a bad example of it, and provides not enough systems to engage the player through its action-packed but very short campaign. I spent around 9-ish hours on it, and even in those 9 hours we did a lot of same things. And I do think and feel that some aspects would spice that campaign up. And not only me, some reviewers also mentioned this. So if they work on additional systems and do not treat the campaign like something leftover or something that they have to add in, I think that if we get another entry in the series, it could be a great pretender for one of the top games of Warhammer licensed games. But this one's not it. Not unless you want to strongly focus on multiplayer. And yeah, I think that's all for this review. Thank you for listening to me, thank you for your time, and I hope to see you guys in future LPs, and who knows, maybe next installment of the Space Marine. We never know. So yeah, sleep well, play well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye, take care, cześć.